Hi. Hello. I'm not doing this with Sage, by the way. My Sage isn't even high enough. But hi, hello. It's a little different. Slightly. Very little. How am I oding? I'm assuming that's meant to be doing. I'm okay. I'm a little sick. Not too bad, though. It's like a very light cold. I don't know where the fuck I got it. I think I might have picked it up at the hospital or something. I'm not sure. That's like the only place I went that was like enough time for me to catch something and like wait to get it. Oh my god, this is actually like really loud for me. Let me lower that a little bit. Oh god, so I can hear myself think. Holy shit. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing once through all the Arcadion raids. Not in order necessarily. It just depends on what I get first. Because I do be needing to get gear. So I'm just gonna go for a roulette of all 4 of them, and then we'll tick off whichever one I've done, because then I can no longer get gear from it for another week. I might try and do this like every week, until I've got everything. I don't know. But we vibin'. I do also need to level Sage. I've only got Sage on level 92, nearly level 93. But I don't think I'll be doing that on stream today. I don't know. Maybe I won't feel like drawing. We'll see. You notice I keep looking over here because all my OBS stuff is on a monitor I don't usually have it on. Wow. But yeah, I don't know how long it's gonna take to get in. Yeah, I'm vibing. Slightly sick. The sore throat's mostly gone at least. I'm just kind of sniffly now. A bit like my voice is a little fucked. Oh, there's a Vista over there. I didn't even see that. How have I not seen that? I spent so much time in the studio already and I've never spotted that Vista. Hello? I literally, like, day 1 of the DLC of Dawn Trail releasing took photos over there. How did I not notice that? That's probably I didn't have the Vistas unlocked then, but what the hell? Yeah, I don't think I'll do Sage leveling today. I might, but I don't think so. I'll probably do that after stream. Or, I don't know. Depends how I feel. Guess everyone might be in Solution 9. It's actually kind of weird feeling. I don't think I've seen so few people here. Oh, it's because everyone's all over the place. Everyone's probably doing their stuff. But yeah. I don't think anyone's online. Oh, well, there's one friend online, but they're not in Dawn Trail content. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know them that well. They're like a random person I met at Gold Saucer I was being silly with. Do you make me Italian for a lark? I don't know. Do you? Do you want me to not be able to adequately compose my thoughts while struggling? It will just end up with me screaming for help in one of these. Some of these are pretty decent, actually. I think I've died at least once to all of these, but I'm pretty good at M2. Not so good at M3. Pretty bad at M4, I'm not gonna lie. The first thing I did in M4 was course myself off a platform. So, you know, that went well. I've only done it once through. I could also be funny silly and try doing an extreme, but do want those wings, but I don't think I know the fight well enough to go into a farming lobby. I don't know. I haven't cleared it before. I've gone like a quarter through, and that's about it. Mind you, it wasn't my fault. I kind of vaguely knew what I was doing. I had at least like watched the tutorial video. Although I don't remember if the mechanics just kind of loop after that. I don't know. But I feel like anyway, I feel like I should clear it at least once before I join a farming lobby, but I don't know if there's anything that isn't a farming lobby. It's that one, I guess. Anyway, those will probably be gone by the time I'm done with Arcadion. And we wait and we wait. There was not even a point to me doing fates. I can't level up on Red Mage. I'm already max level on this one. Hey, do you like my Dawn Trail getup? Using near gear. I think most of my outfits for LA involve near gear. They're just such good gear. Just like them too much. How'd you get to Dawn Trail and still be a sprout? Huh? How? How'd you manage that? What? I don't... Huh? I don't know if you even get that if you, like, level skip. Oh. Oh boy, it's the one I'm bad at. Let's go! Not even that I don't know the mechanics, I just suck at executing them. Oh, don't fuck with me, healer. Don't fuck with me. Thank you. Hello, every pony. Let's get this asshole. Oh my god, do a flip.
I'll blow you.
Okay, we're just going. Cool. No one else is gonna. Okay, epic. I feel like I'm not zoomed out enough, but I am at max zoom out, so, fuck me, I guess. God, I hope we have good healers. I really hope we have good healers. This is always down. It comes down to the heal checks on this one. There's like only so much I can do. Okay, which side are you going? That side. Okay. Someone get hit by that? God. That side. I feel like I should really be turning on legacy movement, but I do in fact know all the mechanics for this. It's just how good I am at actually executing them is usually subpar. This was really a great time to do my melee combo. Ooh, that was a little off. See, look, I do know the fight. I know all the mechanics. I know what they do. I understand how to resolve them. I'm just shit at it. Let's see if I can go without a death here. Unlikely, though. I will be surprised if I don't get caught in a loop, in fact. Aside. Oh, okay, you're not. I thought you were gonna do the double. But no, I guess not. Okay, I can... I wouldn't go over to that one, but... Whoever went to the corner one, that's a really weird choice. I'm not gonna lie to you. Okay, this is a good time to get the combo off. In fact, I can get 2 combos off. Kind of losing my progs, but maybe I should be saving that. I don't know. Who cares? I shouldn't be standing over the tank, though. One time. Over to this side. That was a bit of a waste. Okay, healers, now's your time. Healers, please. Yeah. Good, thank you. Okay, cheers. Good when the healers know what the fuck they're doing. Oh no, don't cross over. Oh, who got hit? Someone got hit. Oopsie. Haven't been hit yet though. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I've done this a good few times. Okay. Okay, here's where I usually fuck up. We okay? We're okay. Oh, stay on this side. Oh god. Rip Black Mage. Okay, healers. Counting on you. Okay, we're alive. That's good. That tends to be a sticking point from my previous experiences. Okay. I'm really hoping you're... Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Alright, stay on this side. Okay, that's usually the other point that I get absolutely fucked. But you know what? It's good that... It's good. Okay. I just need the healers to, keep up. Yep, that's good. Thank you. Very good. I think everyone might have... Oh my god. Please. My ping is not good enough for that shit. Okay, Barber's Garage. Okay, here's the other sticking point. Okay. Okay. Oh, someone's died. Uh-oh, it's a healer. Oops. Indeed. That's not good. Shit. I'm gonna die to this because there's not enough. Oh? No? Okay. I lived. I'm surprised, actually. Whoever the other healer may have been cracking there. I don't know. Maybe the tank also did something. We're also down a tank, aren't we? Eh. I guess I'll handle that. Fuck it, why not? Don't get to that. Okay. Other sticking point. Okay. Just enough time. Side to side. Whew. I am shocked that I have not died. Holy fuck. I am... I'm gonna die here, though. Both healers went down. Two tanks, can you take it down? I don't know, maybe. They might be able to. From 10%? Their greed killed us! They might be able to- Don't cross over! They might be able to. I'm so annoyed. That's like the one thing I hate about this fight, is that I can be performing excellent. That is the best I have ever performed at this fight. I didn't get hit by any mechanics that I wasn't obligated to be hit by. But because the healers got fucked. Because the healers got fucked, I got fucked. Oh, okay. It's always this one. It's always this one. Eh, that's something in my mouth. I'm so annoyed. Like, please. It's so reliant on, like, having decent healers. Oh, no, this is wrong. I don't know why my whole... Well, we try again. Step away. Don't get in that. Even I felt that one. Oh, but the challenge is probably actually use my random tag, so that would be good. That might be an idea. We try again. On to the side. We were so close to beating it as well. We're so close to it. Ugh. If only that one healer had not greeted. Maybe I'll not do that. I don't know how that... I don't know what class off the top of my head that was. That dude who was like standing on the edge of it, I don't know how they were comfortable with that. I'm not gonna lie. Jesus. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, of course it's over on that side. Didn't make it easy. Who the fuck got hit? Bruh. Or can I get this off in time? I don't know. That should be fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh my! The challenger went down hard.
It's just very easy for me as a red mage to just res mage and take a bit of load off the healers. It's like, you focus on keeping us like topped up, please, for this one. I'll get the res. It's fine.
My word, he just assaulted the referee!
He did. He's a scoundrel, right? That's the biggest problem about him. Nothing else. Okay, I thought he was gonna go on the other one. Oh well. It's fine. Y'all are too close for my comfort. Ugh. Oh.
Beautifully done!
Barely. Oh, don't move. Like, it's been a week. I hope the healers kinda at least are starting to know what the fuck they're doing, maybe. I know some- well no one in this group hadn't done it before, from what I saw. Oh, this is... Don't accidentally fall into it. Ah, shit. Fuck. Okay. I'm stuck in my fucking- this is a shit time to choose to do my combo. This was a- oh boy. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, for fuck's sake. There's no way. There's no way!
And they're done! Is it over already?
Ha 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 ha. Hee hee hee. Hoo hoo hoo. Ha ha. Okay. You better not. Fuck me. Fuck me.
A vicious blow! Oh, that'll leave a mark.
I would have been better off standing where I was before, honestly. There's always a little time. Ooh, one healer barely survived. Healer, you might want to get me or the other healer up ASAP. Just a recommendation. I'm shouting into the void. Oh, maybe they're waiting for their LB3 actually. Oh. 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 What just happened there? Oh. Floor gang. How do these people not figured out how that works? Huh? Oh dear lord. Yes, please, thank you. They might need me. It's looking a little dire.
They're still in it, but for how long?
I'm dead. Immediately. Yeah, seriously, LB3. Healer LB3! Yeah, there we go. Okay, good. Okay, we're back in the game. Great time for my combo. Ugh, I hate this. I hate this mechanic. Okay, that's fine this time though. He's not being a total dick about it. Yep, this side.
Die!
Me love my gap closers. Oh, of course it's on me. Me and my no mitts. I got nothing. I got nothing. Just need the healers to keep on healing. Please and thank you. Okay. Please be nice. First, you're not gonna be nice. It's fine. There's enough time. We stay on the side. Okay. Okay. Don't do that on top of me, please. Please and thank you. Harvest Barrage. I hope I'm not fucking myself here. I am indeed kind of fucking myself a little. Okay. Thanks whoever had my ass there. Someone saved my ass a little bit. I might be kind of fucked here though. I'm not gonna lie. Woo. Okay. I'm always so unsure with that one. It really relies on the healers keeping the fuck up. Okay. I have a freebie. I have a freebie combo. Get him. Nope.
It's all over. Until next time.
What's him? Need. Oh, right as the outbreak goes. Okay. I got something. I got a column. Yay! Wahoo! Okay. So that was M3, so we take that out. Don't need to do that. Oh, how many foods do I have? I have 105. Okay. Okay. That break still has another 30 seconds. Wahoo wahoo. I don't think I'll get into more. But, what do I have on me? Let's see. Let me group everything together. Why do I have so many of those? Oh, right, yeah. I kind of forgot. I forgot I had those. So I have this. Let's group all my shit together. What else? Anything else? I think that's it. Unless I'm blind, which I fully could be. Yeah, no, that's all the stuff I have on me. Okay, so we're back from the break also. Okay. Oh, let's see how long it'll take for me to get into one of these. The other three. It's always M3. I feel like I always get into first time. And I'm always like, why? Why this one? That one... Ugh. Always has some issues. Yeah. I should grab these. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Who cares? Where did it say the elite one was? I might be able to do that. Ricopacha. I don't know where in Ricopacha though. So I might be able to do that in the meantime while waiting. You know, why not? Let's see. We'll let it try and tell me what direction it's in. Unless of course I get summoned into a fight somewhere. And funnily enough, I think this actually does like more... It's more of a struggle for my wrist than drawing actually is. Yellow cactus. I don't think it's on this side of the map, it would have already popped up. It'll be on this half. Wow, pretty. Lartoto. Where have I heard the first? Oh, there's a vista here. Look at that. Kind of fate down there, but I don't care about that. Recorlador. Oh yeah, I guess it is Recorlador, huh? Yeah, people doing their quests. To the northeast. Okay. Oh, it's right there. That wasn't all that far. Get gone. Oh. Okay, you're a little tougher than I thought you would be, actually. Nothing you can't handle, though. It should be handleable. As long as I don't piss off anything else, I suppose. I'll do a little bit of curing. A little bit of self-curing. Just in case. Just so we're not getting into scary territory. Okay. I got my nuts. I guess I'll just wander around for a bit. Me into the fighting ring, please. Oh, hey, there's another thing on the list. Might switch to saves just so I can get at least a little bit of XP off of it. It's very nice that they gave more damaging options to Sage. Still feels a little bit limited, but it's like a little bit more. It's a little bit more than there was. It's like, I've got enough fucking healing options. What I need is more damage. Like, I know I'm meant to primarily be a healer, but I like doing a little bit of a damage in between needing to heal, so I feel less useless, you know? I don't know, it just... Okay. Whee! Maybe I should put cardio on myself if I'm gonna be doing that. Whee! I love that that does more... Psyche does more damage than my actual DPS main attack. As an AoE spell. That's kind of crazy, actually. Not gonna lie. Okay. And we'll change back to Red Mage. Maybe I should fix my gear. Maybe I should do that. Not there, not that. Solution 9. No! God, fucking hell, this Aetheryte. Oh my god. Oh. Hold on. Hold on. Let me repair my gear first. That's all I want to do. Okay. I'm pretty okay at this one. Also, I love the music for this one, so... Oh, we got some new people. Oh boy, okay. They're all laughing. I really want the Orchestrion roll for this one. I've been listening to a lot, actually. That and a M4's song. Oh, we're doing a countdown? Okay. Guess there's always something more.
The Honeybee Lovely Show has begun.
Yes, it has.
Let's put on a lovely show for the audience. Submit to your lovely queen.
Dude. What dude? Until the end. Honeybee alive.
Now to savor the sweet sting of Honeybee's charms. Oh, she's definitely feeling your love. Can the challenger resist the irresistible? I know I can't.
Oh. You don't need to get in. I'm already in it. I'm already taking it. Because I know how to do this fucking mechanic. The first couple of times I did this, I fucking saved the asses of my whole party because I was like the only one who didn't die to this shit.
Alas, her charms were not to be denied.
Like, you would be shocked how many people... I feel like this isn't that hard to avoid, personally. But, like, apparently I am, kind of alone in that. I really should have said...
I'll make you mine.
When you feel me, honey, feel like me. I'll be one and only champion. Love me again until the end. You love me.
Is everyone having a good time?
Sorry, I fucking love this song. If you can't tell. I'm surprised no one got got by that. Is it... When I was playing these last week when they released, people kept getting got, like, a lot.
Interesting.
You're too close.
Here comes our fearsome venom strike!
No hard feelings if I kill you?
It's always me that gets that stack. Every time.
You kidding
I don't know what it
me?
is.
Did it work?
Nah. Try harder, girly.
Brilliant.
What's this? Honeybee has changed her routine.
Ooh. Shit. Ooh. Ooh. I'm playing this a little close. Worship me, let me again, until the end. If you love me, love me.
Ooh, what a delightful battle this is.
Never cross me. Again, I really should have said.
We're just getting started. Who's my obedient little bee?
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. Someone gonna get that? Thank you. Did not want to be in that. Okay, let's not be too close to where those are spawning. Ooh. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh shit. I walked through that. Oops. I got distracted. Oh, good. Oh, no. Never mind. It's not all good. I was gonna go and raise that healer and then he got healed up anyway. And I got distracted. You're not on top of me perfectly. Love me again until the end. Am I? Okay. I guess I'll fucking heal myself. Damn. Ouch. Fuck. Should have gone the other direction. I got thrown off. Right. Okay. Wait, shit, I'll deal with myself then. God. Why are you staying over here? Okay. Weird. I didn't actually mean to click magic barrier, but I mean, sure. That's fine. Always something more, yes, there's always something more. It's sad this is the second one to get. I would like to cap it off on this one, but whatever. I do like this fight a lot. Third time? I don't think I've had her do it 3 times before, actually. I don't know. Have I? Love me again until the end. Okay. One stack over here. Where is everyone going? There's... God damn it! That's kind of fucking rude. I'm not your baby girl, but smile. Uh-oh. Ping behave. I always get weird when I'm weaving like that.
What power! Looks like someone isn't holding back.
There we go.
It's all over. Until next time.
The orchestrion roll didn't drop this time. Nah. Hope I at least get some gear. I don't know why, I always find it so funny just seeing them like dead on the floor. It's like, yep. Where's my... There you are. Give me the loot. Oh, I just noticed this person called Barely Bees. Who hasn't rolled? Okay. I don't know what I got there. I got something. Did I disconnect briefly? What happened? What happened? What happened? Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Anyway, what do I have? What did I get? Hologreaves. I don't think that's enough for anything. No, it's not enough for anything. Okay. Well, two more. Two more to do. So you can get one piece of gear from each one. And then I have to wait a week. Which is why I'm doing this today. I don't think I have enough for any tombstone gear. I don't think. No, I'm just short for those. So we'll just live. We'll just live and we'll die and no. You want that car mount, but I have nowhere near enough money. Although that does remind me, I don't know when the last time I checked my retainers was. Maybe I should do that. You have money for me? Yes, you do. Not much, but you have some. I'll take that. I'll take that money. You don't have anything for me. Let's get more ventures. You also don't have anything for me. You do, though. It's also not that much, but it's something. That's enough for, like, one teleport. Maybe. Whoa, what's that like, Spike? What the hell? I have to do all of those? Ah. One's it done? Not those. These ones. I've done more fates than those. What? Although I'm on rank 2 here. Okay, I see. I don't really know how those work. I'm not gonna lie. What do you have? Do you have anything interesting? Probably not. Not really. You know, honeybee for fishing. I need to level Fisher as well. But that's quite low priority, so. I already have one of these, so. Wow, my head is starting to hurt again. Oof. So, I don't remember M1 great, but I had an okay time with it the one time that I've done it. So, should be fine. M4 I'm not particularly good at, but I'm okay at it. Let's see. I wanna... do I have a pet on here? Do I have a pet on here? Oh, I do. I want to pet you. Yay! She's a little loopy-loop. Oh, that's cute. We waiting, we waiting, we waiting. It would probably be so fucking quick if I could get my healer up. But I don't have that. I don't have it leveled. I keep putting it off, actually. I'm a bit lazy, I'm not gonna lie. It's on. No one's been on. I'm the only one who's been on today. I guess. Oh. Well, there goes that person. Ugh. At least the music here is very chill. Let's go Black Cat. I wanted to get that minion. I didn't get it though. There. Splendor's Fender. I need to get more. Oh, epic! Look at that. I want one. I want one. I want a funny car or a funny bike. I mean, I already have a funny car and a funny bike, but I want more. I want more of them. Zone the fuck out for a moment. Oh, M1. Okay, I can do M1. I'm okay at M1. I'm good enough at it. I can manage it. I need to remind myself the mechanics though, because I think that's the one that I haven't done more than once. Whether it was through a wipe or not. Oh, just in time. Right, we're just right into it. Okay. Alright, fair enough.
Can they hold their own against our feline ferocity?
I think I got that just in time. Boy. Okay. Oh, I just realized her theme is... Yeah. Her theme is her sister's, but a different arrangement. That's a neat detail. I didn't notice that until just now.
Can you dodge this, I wonder?
This is fine. I remember it well enough. For at least these. That's a Tank Buster. I fucking love the name of that Tank Buster.
Try this.
Sorry, had to read that real quick. Okay. Don't stand there.
Here it comes. Black Cat's lithe and lethal
Don't stand on
maneuver.
that one. I think this one's okay. Okay. I couldn't quite see it, so I wasn't sure. She's gonna start tossing. Mark this one home. I don't think she did.
Oh dear, the challenger's fallen out of the ring.
Oh. Oh god. Someone doesn't know where they're falling. I wonder if that's one that a lot of people have trouble with for some reason. This seems like the safest.
They're still in it, but for how long?
Guts you like a cod.
I forget how this one works. I was never all that good at this. I'll just follow everyone else. I'm gonna assume that people have a better idea than I do. Oh. Oh. Not a good time to need to do my melee. Okay. You want to be over here. Cross over. I know that one. I got fucked by that one a few times the first time. More so that one I think I got fucked by. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oh well. I did that one a little early, that's fine. Okay, not on this one. We don't want to stay on this one, but we'll go on it for that long. I might be a bit cheeky. I'm a little cheeky when it comes to these kind of mechanics. Don't fall off.
To me, echo of my soul.
Okay, she's gonna start tossing people around. I didn't get tossed last time, so there's probably a decent chance I'm gonna get tossed in one of these ones. Ah, there we go. That's fine. That one's not broken, so I can get yeeted perfectly safely. Yeah. I can get double targeted, that's fine too. Whoever's getting yeeted is about to fall through. Oops. Rip that person. Shit. I don't know. Here? I guess it's the best bet, huh? Not very many good options. Okay, here's where it starts getting a little confusing, if I remember correctly. Because I don't fucking... I already don't really get this mechanic. I think you just have to stand like well out of the way of the paw steps. I think that's it. And then we need to be on the side. I believe. Yeah. It wasn't, Okay. Here. I was a little cheeky there how early I did that. That could have been bad if I was like a second earlier. Yeah, okay. Here. Might as well finish it faster. There we go.
What power? Looks like someone isn't holding back.
No problem. Boy kisser.
It's all over.
Of course.
Until next time.
Give me something, please. Too Sleepy and Boy Kisser. Those are great names. Cube Magica. Who hasn't voted? Who's not rolled? Roll! Hurry up and roll, please! Oh my god. Who hasn't done it yet? What did I get? I got something. Probably the earring? I don't know, I'll have to check. I got that. That's cool, I guess. Where? What did I get? Oh, maybe I got the helm? I really don't need the helm, though. I actually probably should have just said no to the helm. I think I got the helm. I already have the helm. Why am I even voting on it? I already have it. I'm pretty sure anyway. Yeah, that's the one I already have. Albeit, I guess I can use it for healer later. But that's a later thing. Okay, last one. Last one, then moving on to drawing, probably. I don't think I want to do any leveling live on stream. I feel like that's going to be a bit embarrassing. It's very much a toss-up if I remember my mechanics well enough to perform as a healer. I do have someone picked out to draw an art fight. I was originally just gonna do an art fight stream, but I was like, wait, daily reset or weekly reset. That's today. I should stream that. I want to stream the raids. Oh my god. I want to do more Final Fantasy 14 streaming. But I feel like I've done so many art streams that people are gonna get the impression I am exclusively an art streamer, and I'm not. I like video games, and I want to stream video games too. I've just been very focused on like multiple art projects. Like, I finished the rough version of my comic last night. I printed a test copy. I can't bind it properly because I accidentally, when I ordered the stapler for binding books, I accidentally ordered it to my flat. I am not currently at my flat. I'm currently staying at my parents' house. I forgot to change the address, so I fucked that one up. But I don't know how long it's gonna be before I can get like a proper version of it done, because it's gonna depend on how long it takes for me to do the art. I'm doing the art in just in black and white, so I'm a little scared. It's a little scary because I'm not used to using halftones, or screen tones rather. I got some nice screen tone brushes for it. It's mainly because I want to save on ink. Because I am self-printing entirely. I refuse to do anything. I refuse to pay someone else to do something that I am fully capable of doing myself. Even if I have to buy materials for it and learn how to do it, if I can do it myself, I will. Also, I actually do like genuinely enjoy making things. It's something I've kind of discovered. As much as I've had a frustrating go at making things for conventions my first time around, I do actually genuinely enjoy printing things and making things for merch. So I don't know, I like being quite hands-on with it, I suppose. I'm just like, yeah, let me quickly learn how to bind a fucking book. Let me figure this out. Figure out how to properly lay it out for printing. That was the bigger issue actually, because I had to manually do that because I have nothing to set it up appropriately automatically. So yeah. My one slight concern is because the printer tends to be a little off, and I don't know how accurate it's gonna be for the cover specifically. I might have to make that a plain color across two things, across both ends of it, just so it can't get messed up. Ideally, you know. That's probably what's gonna happen there. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be worried about it being off. Especially when I'm self-printing and I'm not gonna. I can't afford for misprints. At least misprints that don't look somewhat purposeful. But you know, what the little guy? I don't think I've ever seen that map before. Ah, yes, that mysterious mistle. I feel like that minion is such a spiky spoiler. It's such a cute minion, but oh, it is a little bit of a spoiler, walking spoiler. There we go. That's one, and then probably hop very briefly to Gold Saucer, just so I can do my mini cat pop. Okay, this one I kind of actually do suck at. Just a bit. Last I tried anyway. Who knows, maybe I'll be a little bit better. Maybe I'll have like streamer luck. Okay, we're doing a countdown.
This is nothing personal, but I must have your soul.
Okay, thanks.
Wicked Thunder has returned to
I'm gonna take it a little personal though. I think I just about got that off in time. I had a little moment there.
There is no limit to Electro's potential.
Okay, it's very slow. So nice and easy there. I need to remember.
Electro has many uses. Watch and learn.
Okay, which side are you gonna laser here?
Her skills are as sharp as ever.
I don't know if there's a way to tell on that before it goes. And do not do as I do, and the first time I ever did that mechanic, I royally fucked up and just kind of bolted myself off. Okay. Oh, for fuck's sake, my ping! Fuck me, my ping! Ugh. I was on the right side and everything. Okay. 1, 2. Oh, my ping! Ugh, there's always one fight it fucks up on. It's like, you can see that I'm well out the fucking way. Like, I'm unambiguously out of the way, but my ping just simply says, no, you're not. Ugh, so annoying.
Wings, one needs simply
At least that doesn't seem... I actually don't really know how this mechanic works.
Wickedly divine.
Oh yeah, it's this. Okay, step away from that. Ooh. Walking right into them. Also, not gonna lie, wood. Wood.
how's this?
I'm not sure if this is the best time to be doing this, but... Fuck, over here. Woo! I barely noticed that at the end there. I don't have another thing. That's fine. Also, this song's a fucking banger. I really don't know if there's a way to tell ahead of time. I don't think there really is. And don't course a course until she's over here already. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it gonna be nice and simple? No, not quite. 1, 2, 3. Oh fuck! I was in there! Oh, I hate my ping sometimes. Fuck. You can see as well. That's the annoying part. Is you can see on stream. That's not my fault. Oh, that's not what I want. Like it's the fact you can very visibly see I am in the correct area. It's just my fucking ping hates me. I hate it here. I hate those mechanics so much. It happened to me a lot in Athena as well. I cannot.
Be gone.
Rude. Okay. Okay. He's fine.
Oh my! The challenger went down hard.
No, over here.
They're back on their feet. What great
I don't remember where I was.
felt that one. Oh, but the
Oh, I think I was
challenger
about to do my melee. Right, yeah, that's what happened. Okay. Laser time again. Yeah, this time over here. Throwing us off. Phew.
How are you still standing?
And here's the finale.
I cannot. I must not lose.
No going back, no going back. Okay. Almost there. Healers. Healers, keep the fuck up. Jingle jingle. Jingle jingle. Just like rattling keys in front of the healers like, hey, can you pay attention? Pay attention, can you click those funny little buttons, please? That was on me. That was actually my bad. I didn't see it until the last second. Henry. Henry. Second sword. Let's go. You're
It's all over.
probably, I don't know. I wasn't paying that much attention. I was so annoyed last time I did this because I got a 95 on that minion, and then someone else got a 96 at last second. It's like, oh, you motherfucker. How dare you randomly roll a number one above mine. Wasn't even close this time though. Hollow armor. Okay. We take that. Alright. Yeah. It's like I can't even get the other stuff. Oh, hey Shatter. Thank you for lurking. That's fine. No worries. Okay. I don't think I have enough to get any new gear. No, that's not enough for anything. But that's fine. We'll do this week after week until I can. Yay! That's fine. Although, I do have enough tombstones or tombstones? Tombstones. For something. What's my lowest here? That ring. Can I get another ring? No, I already have one, so... I guess I'll get... that? Sure, okay. Why not? Oh, it's... oops. Right. Okay, I see. I see the problem. Just return to inventory. Into inventory. And you do an armory chest, and then I can put it on. I didn't notice that this was gone. There we go. And now we can very quickly hop to Old Saucer. Sure. Why not? Let's make it a freebie. Use my last Etherate ticket. I could go get some more if I wanted. Actually, I do have another thing I need to do. I need to check my little squad. Because I keep forgetting to do that. So I still don't have them functional. Nah, no luck. Oh, I break. Okay, well, I'm just gambling, so that's fine. Okay. 1080, that's not bad. Okay. Well, second best. No bad. I don't feel like doing anyway, the wind blows. I don't actually need that much MGP. I'm not saving for anything, so... kinda whatever. And then I need to go back to Limza. Liminza. To the aft castle. Do this real quick. I know I'm still on an ad break, but y'all don't need to know what I'm doing that bad, do ya? What's happened? Okay. I think, yeah, I sent them on like a regimen. Can I please have enough? No, come on! Are you fucking kidding me? Fuck you! Are you serious? I'm gonna end it all. That's so mean. Are you serious? Oh, fuck you. Ugh. I'm gonna commit a fucking crime, honest to God. Why is it so specific? 5 off, I hate that. That's actually really genuinely infuriating. I don't think I can take it down that much, can I? How much above it do I have? For God's sake, I just want to do this. I just want to do this and get it done. Okay, I might be able to take that down by another 40. I might be able to. I'm so mad. I'm actually so angry. That's fucking infuriating. Holy shit. Oh. Anyway. With that, oh god, my inventory is such a mess. Maybe I should have hold on. Let me shove those off with the thing. With the retainer real quick. And then I'll switch to art and get that up. It's kind of chuggy for some reason. What the heck? I'll have to sort my inventory properly at some point, but for now, here, take that. Good enough. Let me get out of the crap. Why is it kind of chugging? That doesn't usually happen. Anyway. Let me exit that. Let me move all my shit over. Huh? Let me get the reference up over there. I haven't pre-sketched anything. My flatmate is telling me about Caesar being an absolute bastard. Unsurprising. Nothing. That's not new. Okay. Right. I just get a missing leg. No, okay, no, it's just behind me. I can see it in the reference. That's fine. There we go. Do I wanna maybe I'm not sure what size I want to make this, actually. Oh, I should probably put music on, that would help. It's like, why is it so quiet? I wonder why. It's almost like it turned off my music. Is it just... Oh, right. I turned my own headphones down. It's like, why can I barely hear the music? That would be why. I'm a bit silly. I'm in a bit of a state. Okay, let me change the category. Like a good streamer, a good little Twitch streamer. Okay. I'm behaving, I'm following Twitch rules. I think I want to make this a square canvas, for my own sake. No, actually. This is a little big. Because I have that set to... Yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. I think it's a bard. Yeah, she's a bard. I've kind of reached the point of art fight where I'm very slightly burnt out. So I'm just like, okay, headshots time. We don't need to do anything particularly special. This is just for a revenge as well. I should actually probably check my art fight real quick. Oh. Oh, I have actually gotten a tank. Ooh. Okay, well I will deal with that after stream. I will go comment on their stuff later and check it. Otherwise I'm just gonna get distracted. Oh, I have like back pain starting to come up again. It keeps like coming up around this time every day, and I'm not sure why. Oh, I really want to check out the artifact pack, but no, I will wait. I will be patient. I can wait. I can be a good little nabby. Or I'll check it whenever I go on like a little break. So I'm probably gonna go and take a little break in a little while. Probably after after I've sketched this, I'll probably take a small break, just to like get some more water and stuff. So I guess I'll check it then. Got like little, just got little tattoo things. I think they're supposed to be tattoos. You know, it's actually shaped a bit more like this. I also need to prep some like new, probably sticker merch for FantasyCon as well. Ugh, I'm working on like 8 billion things, I feel like, at the same time. I want to get like some D&D themed stickers done, I think. I haven't really planned them out too much, though. I've just got like a, oh, I should probably do some of those. That would probably be good. Ooh, funny throat noise. I don't know if that picks up at all when I have those. I just want... Maybe I've upturned them a little too much. Maybe that's why it's all looking weird. Ooh, my head actually is... keep getting like these little throbs in it. I might have put their hair a little bit high. Why am I struggling on this hair so much? What the hell? I think it's just a silhouette I'm not too used to the style of. I think they're supposed to be half elf if I had to guess. On this one? I don't know actually. I have no idea. It looks like kind of half elven, so I'll take that guess. That's a lot of details on their clothes. I need to try and parse. Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, come on. Behave. Does that sometimes. I don't really know what the problem is. They have a hole in there. Okay, here. Maybe it's more like a poncho. I don't know. I guess I'll go with that. Actually. Yeah. I wanna make the puzzle a little bit more interesting. Only for myself. I'll save that and probably go to BRB real quick. Just so I can take a second. I actually do have a headache, oh god. Not too terribly painful, but it's very distracting. But yeah. Okay. Quick break. Be back in like 5 minutes. Okay. apologies, that took slightly longer than intended. Okay. I don't think I'm gonna do a proper background on this. I don't think. We'll see. I do still have that nasty little headache at the back of my head now. It's just gonna be there until whenever. But I'm gonna push through because it's fine. It's not that bad. Could be worse. Feels slightly crap. Turned out there was like one extra thing, or no, there were two extra little things I needed to do during that little break. I was like, oh yeah, I still have to do those, huh? Oops. That's fine. They're sorted now. I'm gonna be a bit quiet just because the headache is making it difficult to think a little bit. But I do want to at least get one art fight piece done tonight. So let's try for that. Okay. But yeah, I might end up finishing a little earlier than usual just because I'm not feeling the best in the world. I think this should still go in front. Actually, yesterday I spent a lot of time napping because I was also sick yesterday. So I spent quite a lot of time yesterday just sleeping. But I didn't do that today, so that might be why my head's hurting a little bit more. Didn't sleep it off. I kind of intended to, and then I actually did things instead. Maybe a bit silly. But you know. I'd already been unproductive for one day. I don't necessarily want to be unproductive for a second. I say as if I didn't literally finish the rough draft of my comic yesterday. But that was later on in the night, so it doesn't count. I'm not gonna think about it too much. Okay. In the reference, she has like a horn around her neck, but then all the other references she doesn't, so... I'm struggling to tell. I think those are supposed to be fluffy. Yeah. Also, we hit 400 followers on here. Now it's 401, mind you, but I think that's pretty cool. And I probably should have made a post or something about that today, but wait. I might be cheeky. Yeah, I think after I'm done with this, I might just end the stream there. Not the line art, I mean the full thing. My head is swimming just a teeny tiny bit. Hey Meowie. Hello. How's the art going? It's going. I've got a bit of a headache because I'm a little sick. So I'm probably only gonna get this one done and then finish up. So I might end up being a bit shorter than usual. Just because of that. We'll see. It might clear out a little bit. But I think I do need to lay down a little bit. So I'll probably take it a bit easy and not go quite as long today. I'm not too sick, I keep getting this headache. I've been sniffly today. I had a sore throat for a couple of days. It's kind of eased off on that one though. But it's very mild. It's like, you know when you're just barely sick enough that like, you feel sick? Like, just barely enough to feel like shit. That's where I'm at. That's how it's been. It's like, okay. Yeah, sure. My head is swimming like a teeny tiny bit. I don't think it wants me to be not on the verge of sickness. Like, it's very much been there. It's just very, very mild on symptoms. It's just like only just barely sick enough symptom-wise that I feel like shit. It's not even like full sick brain. Like, you know when you're sick and you get like your head feels all goopy? It's not even enough for that. But it's just enough that, like, I feel exhausted and yucky. You know? So, I probably caught something during one of those hospital visits if I had to guess. It's like I hadn't really, like, I had been out after my dad got back from the hospital, but like I think the only other time I had been out was like a couple days prior to feeling unwell. Or no, it was literally like the day before, so it was like, well, that wouldn't do it. So that was, that's not enough time for anything to develop, really. So, I don't know. I must have caught something at the hospital. It's not really where you want to be catching things, I suppose, but... Could be worse. Could be worse for sure. Just enough to be annoying. Could've caught Ligma. You're right. It's so real. Perhaps it is Ligma. Ugh. That drowsiness is setting in again. Bleh. I'm so eepy. Why did my model freak out there? I swear out of the corner of my eye it freaked out. All I did was scratch my nose a bit. Jeez. Yeah. So like this character is a D&D character, right? And it's making me think about how I want to play D&D with my friends, but I also know I think they're expecting me to DM because they keep hinting towards it. Like every so often, like whenever tabletop game is brought up, like there's a, it's like, oh, who'll DM, and it's like all eyes towards me, like me, who has only ever DM'd small little one-shots before. I'm like, okay. I just cleared the room. God. It's like, I mean, the funny thing is, I do have that campaign I've been working on. It's like, we were trying to figure out what to play on Sunday, because we were originally going to play Final Fantasy XIV, but then a couple of people's subs had ran out, and I guess they couldn't afford to get them again for now. And one of them was like, oh, we could play that one Goblin game, like, on short notice? No. Hell no. Not today. Especially because I had a funeral, like, after, so it's like, no, I don't have time for that. Not quite. Like, oh god. But I want to play a character. I want to be a player. I do want to DM something, but I also want to be a player. Sobs, cries, shits, hisses, sneezes, snorts. I don't know, I'm running out of words. I think my friend Gino especially might be wanting me to DM something. So he's brought up, he's bringing it up every so often. I'm like, okay. Okay. Eventually, one day. One day I'll be somewhat in the mental position to start a game. My thing is, I don't even know when we'd be able to play within that group, because everyone's schedules are all topsy-turvy at the moment, so I don't know. I don't know if we could run a consistent game. That's the extra bonus, like, with how everyone's schedules are. It's like no one has like a set free day in a week, aside from me, because I freelance, so like I have plenty of time at home. But everyone else is on like, their schedules are kind of all over the place. I'm like, I don't even know how that would schedule for anything, like anything that isn't very, very segmented, you know? I don't believe anyone has set days off, really, at the moment. Adult life schedules, yeah. Die. It's not even just like an adult life schedule thing, it's just everyone's jobs are working over each other, and no one has it like a set, oh, it's all the weekdays or it's just the weekends or anything. No, all of them have schedules that change week by week, so it's nothing consistent. And they overlap with a free day once in a blue moon. And I'm just like, hey, I'm good whenever, for the most part. Just it's funny, silly, you know? least for now, anyway. I know a couple of them are gonna be moving and probably getting new jobs soon-ish in the next few months. So maybe that'll help. But then there's still a couple of people that are all over the place. Oh, I just realized my area scaling's off. Whoops. That's not very helpful. I do think there's a chance that next year I might have to get back to trying to find something part-time, I think. I don't know. There's like I have no control over when I get freelance work. And like I can apply for conventions, but it depends how much I earn at each convention, so I don't know if that's gonna end up working out long term. We'll have to see. So I might good to have a lot of backup plans. My main trouble was I was trying to do that for a solid while last year, and I wasn't getting anything. Like, even trying to get, like, basic minimum wage jobs. Because we had the realization of, oh, I might be overqualified. But then I'm underqualified for my field. Or, well, compared to, like, everyone who's struggling to find work right now. So it's like, oh, ad break. Bit of a nightmare. Nightmare. I can't win. Oops. Oh. Ads. Damn you. Shakes fist at Twitch. Yeah, I don't know. I was having trouble last year. I don't know if I might literally need to send out a version of my CV that does not have my degree on it. I don't know. Oh boy, I'm trying to know if I missed that, huh? I don't know. But I was having like major issues with that last year. Which is not an issue you expect to find with an art degree or a design degree. But I don't know. It was to the point where it did come up as like an issue I was having during universal credit meetings for they were like, maybe they think you're overqualified. I'm like, yeah. Which I think that's the like the dumbest thing. I'm sorry, that is the dumbest fucking job issue. I swear to God. It's like if I thought I was too good for your job offer, why would I be fucking applying for it? Like, my God. So silly. That's not the base color I meant to give them, but sure. Actually, maybe it is the base color I should give them. Maybe they are. I don't know. We're looking forward to upcoming session 0. Yours? Is that with your game that you've been trying to sort out? It's actually really difficult to notice that she does in fact have like lips. There was such a similar color. Okay. She has like both lips are that color, but I don't know if I necessarily want to do both that color. Because usually the dark lip, the upper lip always tends to end up darker. I don't know. Let's see. I guess we can. I guess we can do it anyway. Got you. There you go. Icky. That like actually is very annoying. Like an annoying little pang every once in a while. I may be silly. Oop, that's not what I meant to do. That wasn't at all what I meant to do. How's my day going? It's going okay. I don't know. I'm kind of chill. I was doing like test things with my comic earlier for like test printing it. That was kind of about it, to be honest. Aside from that, I've just been like mildly sick. I'm probably, like I said earlier, I'm probably gonna finish up as soon as this is done, just because my head does hurt and it's getting a bit annoying and I kind of just want to lie down. But I also want to finish this first. I think the one thing with this particular boss mode is more me just being super drowsy and my head hurting a little bit, but like just enough to make me just want to nap it off. I want to do like nothing else. Yeah, I've definitely been sicker on stream. I was definitely sicker when I played Stray on stream a couple of years ago. I was definitely sicker then. Posture. Okay. Up I go. Away from my comfort. But probably for the best in the long term. Ugh. It wasn't a sneeze, that was me coughing. But thank you anyway. Bah. Take care. Well, I'm trying. Okay. I think I generally prefer a darker upper lip. I will. I will do that. We do our funny little rim light. Yeah, let's warm that up a little bit. Looks a little nicer, I think. I think I then want to these funny pink clouds. Icky. Oh, outbreak. And we back. Wowie. Almost done. We're just gonna do highlights now. And then oop, that's this layer type I wanted to make. Use a softer one, maybe. That would help. There we go. Okay. We'll go simple route for backgrounds. Just kind of painting them. I have a grass brush. Just to add a bit more. Yeah, okay. There. Nice and simple. I think that's that pretty much done. I think the only thing is maybe... Oh, that's not a normal layer. That's not a normal layer. Strange. There's here. I missed that. Okay. Here we go. I think that's about pretty much done. I know it's slightly early compared to how I've been streaming recently, but I think I'm gonna call it there. For my own sake. Ooh. Yep, here we go. Let's see. I think I might raid someone. I see. Let's see. Shit. What happened to me muting the site, hey? Let's see. Who is... Oh, you just finished up your session. Timing. Normally I would go a little later, but my head hurt. Let's see. Let's find someone else who's doing some art fight stuff. Preferably now. Let's see. Who is on? There's a sheep farm. Who do I want to go with? Some people, I think, have accidentally left their art fight tags on. Okay, they seem alright. I'm gonna go for someone who has a... Oh, I guess I'll get it up here. No. Really? He's... Okay. This is who I was gonna go with. So we're gonna be raiding Autumn's Bounty. Be nice to them. Be cool. I don't know too much about them, but their art looks neat, and I'm sure they're nice. So, yeah, let's read them. But yeah, thank you for coming. If you came for a little bit or a lot of it, either way, I appreciate it. Be nice. Be chill. Have fun. Bye-bye!